The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask needs no introduction. It's probably one of, if not the single most covered game for video essays, but that's not surprising. It's almost as if the game itself invites closer examination. Its story is rich in symbolism and feels deeply allegorical. Is it a story about grief? A story about trauma? A story about death? Maybe a story about Link's personal journey of self-discovery? These are all just possible interpretations of the game's meaning, and you may have heard various arguments along those lines before. None of those are even talking about the absurdly unique gameplay of Majora's Mask either. There are so many systems and mechanics that I don't think any game has been able to replicate. I can't even think of any that tried. There are dozens of great videos on Majora's Mask already discussing these aspects, but there's something in particular that I haven't seen a single one of them talk about. How this toilet is the perfect representation of why Majora's Mask is a brilliant game. Seriously, and I'll be proving it to you today. That's not all on the agenda though. The format of this video is going to be a little different than usual. There are so many moving parts in Majora's Mask that I can't possibly sum up everything I want to talk about under the frame of the toilet hand alone. That will cover more of what has to do with the game's actual gameplay loop and system mechanics. I also want to talk about the actual story though, with its themes, symbolism, and how it relates to the game's design. There were two more descriptors in the title besides the toilet after all. While these topics are only tangentially related to each other, discussing all three of them will be what it takes for us to get through every aspect of the game. Our bathroom analysis will establish everything we need about the gameplay for us to talk about what I mean by Majora's Mask being a paradox. This will go over how the gameplay blends with the story's themes in a way that I will claim now is completely contradictory. I don't mean that in a negative way. The contrast is a tool used by the narrative itself, and we'll be analyzing that aspect. Finally, once we've wrapped up discussion on gameplay and themes, I'll give my own take on Majora's Mask's actual story. In other words, an analysis of the events that actually happen to Link in the plot. Don't worry, I'm well aware of all the common interpretations of Majora's Mask's story at this point, and I think I've come up with a new angle for the particular reading centered on Link's trauma. It's one I always liked but felt was incomplete. I'll be adding on what I believe, and hope, is my unique touch. That's the goal for today. A toilet, paradoxes, and trauma. 3 topics and 3 parts that will take us through all of the many sets of 3 days in Majora's Mask. Now let's get into our obligatory disclaimers. First, we'll need to talk about all of Majora's Mask, so here is your one and only spoiler warning. We will be spoiling the entirety of Majora's Mask, from the bosses we fight to the ending of the story. There also will be some general spoilers for the game's predecessor, Ocarina of Time. Second, Majora's Mask has 2 versions, the original on the N64 and the remake on the 3DS. The footage you'll be seeing is entirely from the N64 version, but in all honesty, that's just because it was much easier to record. The 2 versions are interchangeable for me personally. There's pros and cons to both, but we won't be spending significant time discussing them. Lastly, Majora's Mask is evidently very open to interpretation, so you may very well disagree with some or all of what I say in this analysis. That's totally fine, and I don't claim my interpretation to be any more valid than anyone else's. Alright, we're now ready to begin. Welcome to The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Let's begin by talking a bit more specifically about this toilet and the hand that's made itself home there. The toilet hand's official name is technically ? But that's too annoying to say, so I'm just going to keep calling it the toilet hand. It shows up every night between midnight and 6 AM inside of the Clocktown Inn. It begs for paper, and if we have some, we can give it to the hand. It will thank us, and as a reward, give us a piece of heart. Afterward, there's no more use for the toilet hand. It's more or less just a gag made out of a Japanese ghost story. It's never even referenced in-game by an NPC or anything like that. It does have an entry in the Bomber's Notebook that calls it the Ghost of the Inn, but otherwise it exists on its own. Despite its relative unimportance and isolation, the toilet hand is the perfect snippet of what I believe are the key traits that make Majora's Mask a really fun game to play. To understand what these traits are, we're going to have to look at the game's structure. I have to assume you at least know what the premise of Majora's Mask is at this point, but just in case, I'll give it to you in a nutshell. The moon is going to fall in 3 days and destroy the world of Termina. We are trapped in a time loop of these 3 days and need to figure out a way to stop the moon from falling. If we run out of time in the cycle, we have to go back to the beginning. That's the gist of it. Zelda games up to this point followed a pretty standard formula. Travel across the world, gather a certain amount of MacGuffins, and use those MacGuffins to defeat evil and save the day. Actually, pretty much every Zelda game before, after, and including Majora's Mask uses this formula too. We have to travel in the 4 cardinal directions outside of Clocktown and summon the 4 giants. Unlike other Zelda games though, I would wager this is not what most people would associate Majora's Mask's gameplay with. There are only 4 major dungeons, which is very low for a Zelda game. That's because they're de-emphasized compared to the real essence of the gameplay, the side quests. I mentioned something called the Bomber's Notebook earlier. It's a neat little book that you get from the Bomber Kids that tracks various NPCs and their schedules. If someone is added to the Bomber's Notebook, it means there's something extra you can do with them. The game doesn't give you any direction on what you're supposed to do though, which differentiates it from your average quest log. For example, the leader of the Gormon troop can be added to your notebook as soon as you get it. He just kind of walks around Clocktown all grumpy. Perhaps if we found a way to cheer him up, he'd give us something. We can't actually do this for a very long time though. That involves saving Romani Ranch after the 2nd dungeon and getting access to the milk bar. But the hint that we can do something with the Gormon troop leader can be obtained way beforehand. I really like this system. It's a good compromise between giving the player some direction of where to look for rewards, but doesn't give them any information beyond that. Figuring out both what to help these characters with and how to do that is part of the intended gameplay experience. We're going to be spending a long time in the same 3-day cycle, so the game can't just give us all the answers right away. If it did, then it becomes a lot harder to get invested in the world because the cycle would start to feel repetitive and tedious. A lot of the mystery and intrigue would fall apart. I do think it's sometimes a little too cryptic for its own good, but we don't need to spend time talking about that. When Majora's Mask is just the right amount of cryptic though, then it becomes satisfying in a way like no other game in the medium. That brings us back to the Toilet Hand. It has an entry in the Bomber's Notebook, which gives us confirmation that we can get something from it. Seems simple enough? We just need to give it a piece of toilet paper. That's easy. Toilet paper is an everyday object, so we probably just need to go grab it in the shop or something. But nope, they don't carry it. And no NPC in the game will give us toilet paper. That means we need to think outside the box just a bit. The Toilet Hand didn't actually specify that the paper it wanted had to be toilet paper, but it's easy for our brains to make that assumption since we find it in a bathroom. We still can't buy any paper-like objects anywhere though. In the center of Clocktown is a Deku Flower, in which lives a business scrub. He owns the property and has the deed to prove it. The thing is, though, he's heard that moon tears are all the rage these days, and he'd love to get one for his wife. He'd be willing to trade his property for a moon tear if we have one. To obtain a moon tear, we're going to have to go to the Astral Observatory. To get to the observatory, we're going to have to get through the Bomber Gang kid guarding the entrance. To do that, we'll need to obtain a code that is randomly generated each playthrough. To get this code, we'll have to win a game of hide-and-seek with 5 of the Bomber Gang kids. While we can't become an official Bomber Gang member ourselves and get ourselves that coveted notebook while we're a Deku Scrub, they still give us the code as a reward for winning. Using this code allows us access to the Astral Observatory, wherein lives an old astronomer. He'll let us look through the giant telescope there, and if we direct our view to the top of Clocktown Tower, we can see Skull Kid taunting us. Suddenly, though, the camera pans up to the moon, which sheds a tear that conveniently lands just outside the Astral Observatory. We can then grab the tear and go back to the business scrub. We give it to him, and in exchange, he gives us the deed to the Clocktown Flower. This is the start of a long trade chain side quest that spans the entire game. All 4 major regions outside of Clocktown also have a business scrub that's willing to part with their flower in exchange for a different one. We can give the Clocktown deed to the Swamp Scrub, the Swamp deed to the Mountain Scrub, the Mountain deed to the Ocean Scrub, and finally the Ocean deed to the Canyon Scrub. Trading for all of these flowers lets us access new heights in the different areas, and our new reach grants us the ability to pick up a whopping 5 whole pieces of heart. There are 52 pieces of heart in the game, so that's just under 10% of the game's second most important collectible, all from this single side quest. So, why are we talking about these business scrubs? Well, as it turns out, this completely unrelated quest chain that exists on its own and gives very meaningful rewards is our source of paper. When we purchase a flower, we get the actual deed added to our inventory. It's a legal document that's written on paper, after all. Any of the deeds will do, and we can take it to the toilet hand and we'll be able to save it from its awkward situation. Doing so locks us out of doing further trades in the business scrub line for the rest of the cycle. The solution to the side quest of the toilet comes from a different side quest. Isn't that interesting? It isn't even just the business scrub trading chain that you can use here. While certainly less practical and probably even less ethical, you can also give the letters from the Anju and Cafe side quest to the toilet hand, which also breaks that quest line. We'll be talking more about Anju and Cafe later, by the way. So what do I find so interesting about the fact that paper can only be obtained from unrelated side quests? Well, it's simple. Suddenly, these unrelated side quests are actually quite related, and that concept is everywhere in Majora's Mask. Everything feels interconnected. Take, for example, the all-night mask. It's only sold at the curiosity shop on the night of the final day. There's a problem with this, though. It costs 500 rupees, and we can only hold 99 of them at a time. First, we need to upgrade our wallet. Twice. You get one wallet upgrade for storing 200 rupees at the bank, and the other wallet upgrade comes from cleansing the Great Bay Spider House on the first day specifically. So, once we obtain both wallet upgrades and earn some money, we can go to the final night and check out the curiosity shop, and it's not for sale. Instead, there's just a bomb bag. The all-night mask can only be obtained if you save the old lady at the bomb shop from the robber Sakon on the night of the first day. This single prevented robbery has a butterfly effect, leading to the all-night mask becoming available. Once the creepy-looking thing is finally in our possession, what can we do with it? Well, we can head on back to the Clocktown Inn and talk to Anju's grandmother while wearing the mask. Now we can finally stay awake while listening to her stories, and we can earn 2 pieces of heart from her. Let's slow down for a second. How many moving pieces was that? In total, we needed to obtain 700 rupees, store 200 of them at the bank, clear a puzzle house, and prevent an actual robbery. Only then can we get the all-night mask and the 2 pieces of heart it unlocks. Absolutely none of these steps have any relation to each other. Maybe you could argue the robbery is related to the curiosity shop, but there's nothing tying the all-night mask to them. This is what I believe to be the essence of Majora's Mask's gameplay loop. The entire world feels like a puzzle. Every time you get a new collectible, you must ask, what can I do with it? And the answer 99% of the time is, something. The Bremen mask lets you march around these baby chickens and hasten their growth, somehow, netting you another mask, the bunny hood. Clearing the swamp spider house gives you the Mask of Truth, which can be used to gain insider information on the dog race at Romani's ranch. Getting the postman's hat lets you check the mail. It's really cool game design. You could honestly make a whole game about collecting a series of items through exploration and puzzle solving that allow you to explore even more, which gives you more items, and so on. Of course, it has to end eventually, so maybe you throw in a boss fight at the end of the chain to really encapsulate the whole experience. Aren't Zelda dungeons so cool? Oh, sorry, did you think I was still talking about Majora's Mask side quests? Ah, my mistake. It's easy to get confused when Majora's Mask as a whole is basically structured like a Zelda dungeon. Think about it. You could relate most items in the game to being a small key that opens a new area of the dungeon. That feeling of discovery and progression permeates everywhere in Majora's Mask's side quest design, and I believe that's a large part of why the side quests stand out so much compared to the game's actual dungeons. The world itself is almost mechanically more interesting. The crazy thing is Majora's Mask actually has pretty good dungeons overall. They just somehow get overshadowed by the overworld, which honestly says a lot about the game's quality as a whole. For me at least, Majora's Mask is the only Zelda game where I am compelled to get all the major collectibles each playthrough. I always get every mask, piece of heart, empty bottle, stray fairy, and the gilded sword. If I don't, it feels like I didn't actually finish the game because it feels like I missed out on part of the dungeon that is the overworld. We've now learned the interconnectivity between collectibles is a key component of Majora's Mask's gameplay, but why did I highlight the toilet hand specifically? If the whole game is designed in this way, then I could have picked any other side quest in the game. Well, first, there's a minor point. The toilet hand is a little different from other instances because it requires an intermediary quest item, as opposed to something like a mask that you keep forever. It's a stronger representation of how intertwined the game feels because it makes two quests have a new branching path. The other, more important reason why I chose the toilet hand to be representative of the game is, well, to put it bluntly, the toilet hand is incredibly weird. Like, let's think a little harder about this. The toilet hand is not visible immediately upon entering the bathroom. It spawns in quickly, but there's enough delay for us to be surprised by it. Don't forget it's completely quiet and dark out, too. We also can't forget that imagery of a solitary hand actually has meaning in Zelda games. Floor masters and wall masters, debatably the scariest enemies in the entire series. There's a little noise when the hand emerges as well. For the Japanese player base, they may even think the ghost story associated with it. Add it all up, and the toilet hand is essentially a jump scare. Obviously, the fear doesn't last long and it becomes humorous when it begs for toilet paper, but I could easily see players getting startled by it. Once we get over the initial shock and have a chuckle, we can then start processing what we're actually looking at. What even is the toilet hand? It's human-like, but the proportions are way off compared to other human characters. Its skin tone is also ghostly pale. What is even going on in there? You would think the outer part is the toilet, but apparently this creature is just deeper inside? We do hear it flush when we give it paper, as if the real toilet is further down somehow? I'm not really going anywhere with this. I have no idea what species the toilet hand belongs to, but we're not meant to know. It's just a weird idea thrown into the game for fun, and that's what I'm getting at. Majora's Mask is weird. It's one of the weirdest games I've ever played. Not only do you meet a hand coming out of a toilet begging for toilet paper, but you also save cows from an alien invasion. There's even a scarecrow that understands the machinations of the flow of time and teaches you its secrets. It kind of feels like they just added whatever ideas came to mind into the game. That may actually be true for all we know. The development cycle of Majora's Mask is common knowledge at this point, but I'll provide another explanation in a nutshell. Majora's Mask was developed in roughly a year's time, which is ridiculously short for a game of this scale. It was only possible due to heavy asset reuse from Ocarina of Time. I don't have anything novel to add to the dev story, other than this is probably why the game is as weird as it is. They didn't have the time to think twice about what they were doing. The weirdness isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I love the game so much. I struggle to articulate why exactly, but the best way I can put it is that it helps make the game feel authentic. We obviously can't know for certain, but it seems like the only limit on what features and events the team could add to the game was, do they have the time to implement them? Majora's Mask doesn't feel overly sanitized. Rather, it feels like there was a clear vision for the game and they saw it through, no matter how weird it may have appeared on paper. The toilet hand is a nice little snippet of that concept of embracing their own weirdness. When you combine the weirdness with the quest interconnectivity element, the toilet hand is the perfect representation of the less obvious game design elements that make Majora's Mask so special. We've talked quite a bit about toilets, so I think it's about time that we shift gears to discuss some other elements of the game. I made a claim at the beginning of the video that Majora's Mask is contradictory, and we're going to analyze what exactly I mean by this. To do that, though, we're going to have to establish what Majora's Mask is aiming to accomplish as a video game in the first place. What aspects of the game does it prioritize? What does it want the player to feel? To do that, we should probably talk about its opening hours. The opening of a video game is critically important. It's the hook to get players interested and keep playing. The first impression is always the most impactful one, so games tend to try to put their best foot forward if they can. What, then, is the opening of Majora's Mask like? We don't need to talk much about the literal opening cutscene. Link gets mugged by Skull Kid, his horse Epona gets sent to a farm upstate, he chases Skull Kid into the world of Termina, and he gets transformed into a Deku Scrub. It definitely sets a dark mood, and I like it a lot, but you know what's never actually established throughout the opening? Not by Skull Kid, not by the Happy Mask salesman, and not explicitly by any NPC in Clocktown? The fact that the moon will fall in 3 days. The time limit of 3 days is set by the Happy Mask salesman, but he only said he had to leave town in 3 days, with no mention of the moon. The opening cutscene when we take our first steps in Clocktown deliberately hides the moon out of view. There's also not much reason to look up at the sky on our own. That requires us to go into a first-person perspective, and it's unlikely that we do this without the game telling us. It's not until we interact with some NPCs around Clocktown do we begin to get a clue of the predicament we're in. We might then take a look at the sky and see the moon's horrifying face and terrifying proximity, but if we don't do that by ourselves, the game only finally shows us it directly in the astral observatory. Even then, just looking at the moon doesn't give us the full context of what's going to happen at the end of the third day. I wanted to bring this up because the moon has kind of become synonymous with Majora's Mask. It's easy to forget that the game hides this critical detail from us for a relatively long time. This is going to tie into an aspect of the game's story that we'll talk about in a bit, but there's another side to it that we have to get through first. We don't know exactly what the dilemma is during our first 3 days, but what do we actually do while we're figuring it out? Well, honestly, not much of anything. We don't have any of our real abilities at the moment. Link is stuck in his Deku Scrub form, so we just don't have any of his normal tools. We're stuck like this for the entire first cycle of the game, and not only are we trapped in this form, we're trapped in Clocktown too. The guards won't let us leave without a weapon. There's nothing we can really do to advance the story beyond our visit to the Astral Observatory, which only takes about 10 minutes. There are a couple items to find and we can grind rupees if we want, but otherwise the most productive thing we can do is meander until we finally reach the last 6 hours of the third day. That's quite a lot of downtime, isn't it? Try comparing it to the game's direct predecessor, Ocarina of Time. While we don't exactly start in an action sequence or anything, obtaining a sword and shield in Kokiri Forest is a much quicker task than waiting out Majora's Mask's first cycle. Once we get our sword and shield, we can jump straight into the game's first dungeon. That is absolutely not true for Majora's Mask. We won't be entering the first dungeon until around 2 hours of gameplay, but possibly even later depending on how much exploring we do. This design choice suggests to me that Majora's Mask does not put gameplay first and foremost. Rather, it focuses on its world, characters, and atmosphere, because our first impression of the game is entirely based on these aspects. Alright, so we have no idea what the stakes of the game are, and we have no idea what we're supposed to do for the opening hours of the game. When you put these two details together, it reveals a major theme of the game: uncertainty. It feeds us the bare minimum amount of information to understand what's going on and what we have to do while hiding the most important details. In addition, there are many NPCs in the game whose struggles are centered around being uncertain of what awaits them in the future, whether it be with the moon or other aspects of their personal lives. This creates a particular atmosphere of uneasiness that I don't think is captured by many other games. If not many characters in the game feel like a confident source of truth, then that rubs off on the player. Majora's Mask is lauded for its heavy atmosphere, and I think this is a large part of what makes it special. That's all well and good, but now I want to propose a question. Why is uncertainty such a prominent theme of Majora's Mask when it's the one game when we can be absolutely certain of everything that unfolds? The setting of the game is literally within a perfect time loop. If we take the same actions in different cycles, we'll get the same results. Some side quests are entirely designed around us being certain of the events that happen in the loop. Why is the game designed like this, narratively speaking? Perhaps there's a deeper meaning to this juxtaposition on a thematic level? Well, let's put a bookmark here, because we can't answer that question right now. We haven't even left Clocktown yet, so let's journey in each direction and see if we can figure out the solution along the way. We're going to touch on a lot of different topics that might seem unrelated at first, but trust me, this will all become relevant. At the end of the first cycle, we have nothing to do except aim for a miracle by confronting Skull Kid at the top of Clock Tower. His dark fairy friend, Tail, tells us to go to the swamp, mountain, ocean, and canyon, and bring the 4 who are there here. This is our only form of instruction for the entire rest of the game. That's what I meant by bare minimum earlier. The light fairy we have alongside us is Tattle, by the way. She was also Skull Kid's friend, but got separated from them and is just kind of tagging along with us. She's quite rude and regularly insults Link, which is a stark contrast from Navi in the previous game. Anyway, we shoot Skull Kid with a magic snot bubble and get our ocarina back. We're then able to play the Song of Time and reset the cycle to the dawn of the first day. With our ocarina in hand, the Happy Mask salesman teaches us the Song of Healing and restores us to our normal form. We also obtain the Deku Mask, which transforms us back into a Deku Scrub when we wear it. Now that Link is back to normal, we're able to leave Clocktown and explore Termina Field, aiming for the places that Tail told us about. The general story flow goes something like this. We arrive at a new area, discover something has gone horribly wrong, get acquainted with the locals, take one of the locals' souls for our own, learn a new song, use that song to unlock the dungeon, beat the boss, save the area, collect any goodies we get for doing so, then reset the cycle and do it all over again in the next one. Simple enough, right? No? Alright, you got me. I'm just kidding. If you're quick enough, you can technically clear the entire game in one 3-day cycle. Okay, obviously we need to talk a little more in depth about the transformation masks that Link gets in the game. All of them are created from healing the soul of a dead person with the Song of Healing. The Goron mask is created from Darmani, a Goron warrior who already passed away before the game started. The Zora mask is created from Mikau, who quite literally dies in front of us. He's severely injured and we just happen to be there when he succumbs to his wounds. Link even makes a grave for him and pays his respects. The Deku mask, well, we'll have to come back to that one. We do learn who the mask is made from eventually, but it's a mystery for the entire duration of the game. The Deku mask will be really important later, so don't forget about it. The transformation masks are probably the best part of Majora's Mask's gameplay. It's just really cool that Link essentially has 4 different movesets, and their actual movement is really fun to mess around with. Goron rolling and Zora swimming in particular. They're incredibly powerful tools and are used in every area of the game. The masks are used for basic movement, solving puzzles, combat, and even unlocking special interactions with some NPCs and opening up secrets. They're wonderful, and that makes the intense pain that Link suffers when he puts them on all the more strange. I don't mean from an in-world logical point of view. It makes total sense to me why quickly transforming into a different species would be painful. I mean from a narrative perspective. Why color these masks in such a negative light if they're one of the highlights and selling points of the game? Not only are the transformations obviously painful, but they're really creepy. They're also products of death, as we've already established. These crucial, fun, unique masks are surrounded by death and suffering. Why? I also want to highlight the method by which we learn each song that grants us access to the region's dungeon. The Sonata of Awakening is taught to us by this captured monkey, being tortured for a crime he did not commit. The Goron's Lullaby is taught to us partially by the Goron Elder, but we only fully learn it when talking to the child Goron. The New Wave Bossa Nova is taught to us by newly hatched baby Zoras. All of these songs are given to us from symbols of innocent life, an animal, a child, and newborns, and they unlock the most dangerous places in the game filled with the most powerful enemies. The great evils of the world are locked away by pure spirits. So, associated with each of the first 3 major areas is a mask and special ocarina song, with each mask a product of death, and each song a product of life. The 4th area, Ikana Canyon, is a little different. It has no mask associated with it, and the song used to access the 4th dungeon is also different from the rest. The first 3 all only need to be played once to access their respective dungeons, but the 4th, the Elegy of Emptiness, is taught to us by the souls of the dead, and must be played several times in order to solve a puzzle to reach the final dungeon. It kind of seems like the pattern established has been broken, at first glance anyway. There is actually a mask associated with Ikana Canyon that's surrounded by death and suffering that dramatically changes our gameplay experience that we can only acquire with the Song of Healing. The Gibdo Mask. Ikana Canyon is haunted by the undead. Gibdos mindlessly circle the house at its center, and we can only get rid of them if we learn and play the Song of Storms. Once we do that, the little girl will exit the house and we can sneak in. When we go to the basement, we can find the girl's father has been half transformed into a Gibdo. We heal his soul with the Song of Healing, and he drops the Gibdo Mask. Thankfully, he survives, and the two share a very heartwarming reunion. It's more imagery of innocent life, the love a child has for their parent, and the love the parent gives in return. The Gibdo Mask is not a transformation mask, but it does transform our gameplay experience. It transforms it in such a dramatic way that I would say this is the single most important regular mask we get in the game. Most of the regular masks are optional collectibles, but a handful are required for progression. Of the few required ones, they're pretty much all only used for one specific interaction and then are never needed again. The Majora Mask, for example, was needed to enter Ikana Canyon in the first place, but after that we can just take it off and be done with it if we want. The Gibdo Mask is different, though. It has a real purpose that fundamentally changes the game so much that it may as well be a transformation mask. What does it do, you may be asking? Well, if you don't know already, and happen to be standing, then you may want to sit down. Are you ready? Alright, no turning back now. The Gibdo Mask reveals the truth of the world of Termina. The undead are sick dancers. I mean, look at these redeads go. Isn't that so cool? We can go right up to them and they don't scream at us and try to suck our blood anymore. They're just busy dancing. Alright, the Gibdo Mask's real effect is a visual gag. Gibdos and redeads now think we're one of them and are free to let loose around us. That's funny and all, but I claimed this dramatically changes the game, and I wasn't kidding. Suddenly, the scariest aspects of the game make us laugh. Now instead of cautiously creeping around every redead to avoid being jump-scared, we look forward to seeing them bust new moves. Horror turns into humor. It's a complete opposite emotional response. It's particularly interesting when you consider how redeads were used in Ocarina of Time. Harsh symbols of the fall of Hyrule that really make the player understand the new danger. Okay, so what have we learned in our heavily summarized journey through Termina? Our light fairy companion insults us, while our dark fairy foe gives us guidance. Transformation masks are the most fun mechanic in the game, but they all spawn from death and cause suffering. This is contrasted with all the symbols of innocent life that give us the songs to access the dungeon in each region. Finally, all of the scary creatures in the game can be turned into comic relief. Our overarching question for this journey was to figure out why the game is filled with uncertainty despite us being able to be certain of future events. As it turns out, though, the entire game is filled with more paradoxes. Everything innocent, happy, and positive has some sort of dark and depressing side to it of varying degrees. On the other hand, though, everything evil, sad, and scary has some sort of fun and humorous side to it. This is too many occurrences for me to write it off as a coincidence. I believe these paradoxes were a conscious design choice, especially because even the mundane parts of the game incorporate the pattern. That's why I brought up Tattle and Tail. One would expect the light fairy to be the nice one and the dark fairy to be the rude one, but they're opposite. Here's the payoff for the toilet hand as well. The hidden jumpscare NPC turned into a funny gag is the exact same thing as what happens when we wear the Gibdo mask in front of redeads. The question then becomes, why is everything paradoxical? Well, let's think back to the question we asked before our current question. What does Majora's Mask emphasize as a video game? We established that it was focused on its world, characters, and atmosphere. We talked about the atmosphere of uneasiness, where we found the contrast between certainty and uncertainty. Then we traveled the world and found a pattern of paradoxes. That leaves the characters, and here is where we'll find the connecting pieces. I want to highlight two NPCs in particular. I believe they are the ones that truly embody the paradoxical themes of Majora's Mask as a whole. Anju and the Postman. The Anju and Cafe side quest is one of the most famous side quests in all of video games, and it's from Majora's Mask. The premise is basically this. Cafe has gone missing, and we have to find him. The cool thing is Cafe is actually one of the first characters we see in the story. He's the purple-haired kid wearing a Keaton mask checking the mail at the dawn of the first day. It's no secret where Cafe is hiding, but the difficulty comes from figuring out how to meet with him, and the mystery is, why does he look like a child? While we're investigating his disappearance, we eventually learn that the receptionist at the inn, Anju, is Cafe's fiancé, and through a series of other events and connections, we can eventually make contact with Cafe himself. He reveals he was transformed into a child by Skull Kid, but that's the least of his concerns. His actual problem is his sun mask was stolen by the thief Sakon. In Termina, a ritual for marriage is to exchange masks. Cafe was meant to give his sun mask to Anju in exchange for her moon mask. The questline covers the entire 3-day cycle and uses elements from every region of the game. We don't need to go over all the specific tasks we must accomplish to make this happen. The main idea is we deliver letters from Cafe to Anju so she gets convinced to stay in Clocktown rather than evacuating with everyone else. She believes that Cafe will return to her, and she resolves that she'd rather face the moon together with her love than run and perhaps never see him again. Kafei will also give us a letter meant to be delivered to his mother, at which point the quest has two diverging paths. We can either deliver the letter ourselves, or we can give it to the postman to deliver. The postman is perhaps the most tragic figure in Majora's Mask. He follows a rigid schedule throughout the cycle, and nothing ever changes it. If you try to talk to him while he's out delivering mail, he'll just scold you. After hours, you can find him in the post office and play a minigame with him for a piece of heart. The minigame is trying to count to precisely 10 seconds, which is representative of the postman's obsessive state of mind. To him, the schedule is absolute. He must obey the post schedule because it is all he knows. If we go to the post office on the night of the final day, we can find the postman having a mental breakdown. He knows the danger the town is in and really wants to evacuate, but he just can't find it in him to do so. Evacuating would mean going against the schedule. We can find a note on his desk that he wrote to himself, in which he begs himself to leave town even if it's not on the schedule. He's completely self-aware of his faults and obsessive tendencies, but he tragically just can't find the inner strength to overcome the obsession. Giving Kafei's letter to the postman will snap him out of this state. He sees the letter is marked as high-priority mail, which is the one thing that can transcend the schedule for him. It's established that the postman is one of the sole confidants that Kafei currently has, so I personally like to think that Kafei marked the letter as high priority, knowing how the postman would respond. He might have suspected the postman was struggling with the decision to evacuate, and the letter would connect him to Kafei's mother, who is the one person that might be able to help the postman's struggles. Indeed, she is. After the postman delivers the letter, he's finally able to free himself from the shackles of the schedule. He gives us his hat, counted as a mask, and he happily skips town, running far more quickly than he ever did while delivering mail. If we've helped Kafei get the sun mask back from Sakon, then we can return to the Clocktown Inn and wait with Anju for Kafei's arrival. It's incredibly tense. The timer ticks down just as it always does, but it feels even heavier here. We know that the moon will fall at the end. We know that the reunion between Anju and Kafei is doomed. We wait anyway, knowing giving them this small reprieve in this one timeline is the best we can do for them. Anju has her mind made up. She doesn't know what will happen to Clocktown, but she trusts that Kafei will come back to her. The timer gets lower and lower, eventually reaching about 90 minutes remaining, and only then will Kafei enter the room. Despite his transformed appearance, Anju recognizes him as her love, and they embrace each other. The two exchange masks, creating the couple's mask, which we take as witness to their union. The two remain quietly embracing each other, ready to tackle whatever the future holds together. Unfortunately, as we've grown very familiar with already, Majora's Mask does not like giving us anything positive without strings attached. We must reset the cycle, separating them once again. The Postman and Anju have something in common. They abandon certainty in favor of embracing the unknown. The Postman, with his rigid schedule, his single source of truth, manages to escape from its clutches and move according to his own free will. Anju objectively has a much better chance at survival by evacuating with the others, but she chooses to forego this certainty in favor of the uncertain reunion with her fiancé. She trusts that Kafei will return, but she can't know for certain. She also can't know for certain what will happen to Clocktown. While it's true that evacuation wouldn't actually save anyone when the moon falls, we have to think from the perspective of the townspeople here. The moon falling is such an absurd concept that none of them fully understand what that would entail. To them, evacuation is a perfectly reasonable precaution when the moon seems to be touching down at Clocktown. We've finally talked about everything we need to answer the question: why is uncertainty such a large element of Majora's Mask when it's a game designed around us being certain of future events? It's completely contradictory on the surface. It's not just a paradoxical design choice like we've talked about. I would call those paradoxes a motif that helps draw attention to this overall paradox of uncertainty. I don't know if any one of them individually has some sort of greater meaning, but collectively, I believe they represent the fact that life itself often works in this way. It's rare for anything to ever be objectively good or objectively bad. There's almost always a way to spin something positively and negatively, and it's nearly impossible to predict how life will go. Hey, doesn't that kind of sound like uncertainty? I believe Majora's Mask to be a story focused on overcoming fear of the unknown, fear of the future, fear of what comes next, whether it be in years, months, weeks, or perhaps even 3 days. This is demonstrated by the atmosphere of the game and its various characters, particularly Anju and the Postman. Everything is uneasy, everything is uncertain. Anju and the Postman, though, embrace this uncertainty. It's not inherently a bad thing to not know what comes next. It's not like we can do anything about it in real life. We can't see into the future, but what if we could? We can see into the future in Majora's Mask. We can be certain. The game gives us a taste of what that feeling is like. We begin the game feeling uneasy, unnerved, apprehensive, however you want to put it. As we grow more familiar with the world, meet all the fun characters, and start getting hooked on the gameplay, that feeling of uneasiness goes away. Majora's Mask is giving us a rare opportunity. It's allowing us a taste of the power to know the unknown, and with it comes the wisdom and moral of the story. The unknown isn't actually that scary. There is no need to fear the unknown of what comes next. It's pointless to even think too hard about it. Our lives will be filled with both wonderful and horrible experiences. There's nothing we can do about it, and if there's nothing we can do about it, why bother worrying? If we do start worrying, then this heavy fear just hangs overhead as we go about our lives and causes us great discomfort. Hey, the moon is also always overhead, isn't it? Maybe the moon in Majora's Mask is symbolic of the dark, scary unknown of the future. The moon is ever present in the sky. It's always there, but it's always out of reach, hovering in space. That's just like the future. It's obviously impossible to ever reach the future since we can only ever live in the present. However, the moon famously does not stay in the sky in Majora's Mask. That's a little awkward for our interpretation at first, but it still fits if we consider the moon falling a symbol of that fear of the unknown overtaking us. The more we think about it, the larger it gets, the more it hangs overhead, which the moon literally does in-game. In short, Majora's Mask is about overcoming the fear of the unknown and embracing uncertainty. It accomplishes this by giving us a taste of seeing into the future. When we learn that the undead enjoy dancing and even ghouls have toilet paper emergencies, the scariness fades away and our comfort with the game itself rises. We can even extend our moon metaphor a bit with its really spooky face. It's jarring at first, but we naturally get used to it over time, and that's what we have to do with the unknown. It's a part of life, we have to live with it, so we may as well do our best to not fall victim to overwhelming fear of uncertainty. Life is never so black and white, just like everything in Majora's Mask. The only thing we can really do is embrace it and make the most of the cards we're dealt. In one timeline, the video stopped here, a hopefully satisfying end to a thematic analysis of Majora's Mask, but something kept nagging at me. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but as I was capturing footage, I realized what was bothering me. How have we not talked about masks? Well, I mean, we talked about some of the masks and what they do for us gameplay-wise, but I'm talking about the symbolic purposes of masks in literature. The game is called Majora's Mask. The main villain is a mask. We collect masks. It's so ubiquitous to the game that we have to talk about it. The analysis would just be incomplete without doing so. The whole game was probably conceptualized off all the ways masks have been used as story elements before. So, let's dive back into the game once more, but this time, we're going to be focusing on the character that literally hides their true self with masks. We're also going to figure out what the actual story of the game really means, and how the themes we just discussed fit into the bigger picture. It's time to finally talk about Link. The incarnation of Link in Majora's Mask is explicitly the same one from Ocarina of Time. Link is a silent protagonist that doesn't express emotions often, but we can still read into what happens to him and how it's most likely affecting him based on his actions. Ocarina of Time begins with Link as a child, but after he pulls the Master Sword, he gets locked away for 7 years and grows into an adult. Link saves the Dark Future from Ganondorf, and after he's successful, Princess Zelda sends him back in time to his childhood. From here, Link's fairy friend, Navi, vanishes and he goes looking for her, which is where Majora's Mask begins. A common interpretation of this series of events is that Link's childhood was robbed from him and he got traumatized as a result. Fairies are guides for the children of Kokiri Forest, so Link looking for Navi can be read as Link searching for his lost childhood. I totally agree with this reading, and I think that is what's going on in the story from Link's perspective. It's about Link dealing with the trauma of being forced to grow up. Masks are a powerful literary symbol. They're used to cover one's face, which can be a useful way to represent a character hiding their true self. The mask, then, would be what the character wants to project. It's how they want others to see them. Alternatively, a character wearing a mask could be a representation that they aren't themselves. Their true self is hidden underneath the mask, but something is preventing them from being genuine. That's what's going on with Skull Kid, at least. The mask he's wearing, Majora's Mask, has taken total control of him and is what's causing him to do evil. So, why is Link wearing masks in Majora's Mask? What does it mean? Well, I don't think it's because Link is consciously trying to hide his true self or that he's being possessed and is not currently himself. Rather, it's more of a charitable use of the first possible meaning. Link wears masks because he's struggling with his identity. He doesn't know what to project because he doesn't know who he is anymore. Link clings to the idea that he's a child again. His comfortable life in Kokiri Forest is what he most fondly remembers. He carries all the experiences from his time as an adult, but now that he's back in his younger body, he's trying to act like a child again. This is what the Deku mask represents. It's supposed to be symbolic of Link as a child. Link looks like a young kid in this form. Also, the Deku are associated with the forest, just like young Link was. The monkey in the Deku region even reminds us a bit of Link. Some argue that this monkey is supposed to be a metaphor for Link, being a creature from the forest that was punished for a crime he did not commit, and the Deku Princess is supposed to be Zelda, but I don't think the monkey is the real symbol we should be focusing on. It should be Link's Deku form because that's the actual mask he wears, not a monkey one. Now, you may be thinking, but wait, Link was cursed to be a Deku scrub. It's not a form he took on willingly. To that, I agree. Link also did not willingly take on all this trauma from being forced to age and regress in quick succession. His desire to project being a child again was something forced upon him, just like the Deku form. That leads naturally into the Goron mask. Darmani is a fallen warrior, and I believe he represents Link's adulthood. He became a legend known as the Hero of Time, but that legacy isn't known in this world anymore. It only was created in a world that no longer exists. Link still sees himself as that hero though, because he knows what he accomplished. He knows he saved Hyrule. To Link, he is still that hero. Thus, he also projects being an adult by wearing the Goron mask. The Zora mask is a little different. Mikao is a young man, clearly not a child like Link's Deku form, but also clearly not as old as Darmani. He's in between the two forms, and that actually makes a ton of sense. The Zora mask represents Link's present projection. A child with adult memories, a weird in-between state. Mikao is not literally this, but he's the next best thing, a childish adult. His dying words are a very silly plea to heal his soul and how he won't rest in peace while jamming out on his guitar. He pretty much acts like a totally radical, cool teenager. Also, Mikao dies in the present in front of Link. The Goron and Deku both died in the past, symbolizing how Link's childhood and adulthood are both already gone. His present in-between state, though, is, well, present, and that's why we had to see Mikao die. We now have Link juggling between three identities. He constantly shifts masks, representing how Link struggles to settle on any individual one of them to identify with. Is he a child? Is he an adult? Or is he something in the middle? As we approach the end of the game, though, Link does actually decide on an answer. He chooses which mask to keep and decides to cast away the others. The Stone Tower Temple is my favorite dungeon in all of Zelda. One of the most fascinating aspects of it is how we actually access it. We have to climb a long way up while solving block puzzles to make the path for us. How do we solve the block puzzles? We have to hold down switches which cause the blocks to move in mid-air, and once we find the right combination, we can jump across them and continue climbing. There's just one problem. There's only one Link. Luckily, we learned the Elegy of Emptiness. This allows us to create an empty shell resembling ourselves that can hold down switches. We can create a shell for each form of Link. As a human, a Deku, a Goron, and a Zora. Only once we do this can we climb to the top of Stone Tower Temple. Here's what's really interesting though. We can create 4 statues, but one of them is completely worthless. There is no reason to ever create the Deku statue. It's too light to hold down any of the switches. The only way we can reach the top of Stone Tower is if we cast aside Link's human form, Goron form, and Zora form. The imagery of this is abundantly clear. Link climbing the Stone Tower in this way is a metaphor for reaching enlightenment, ascending to a higher state of being by coming to terms with who he really is. He is a child again. He rejects his adulthood. He rejects the notion of an in-between state. He clutches onto the Deku form because he clutches onto his childhood. In retrospect, it's kind of obvious this is what Link wanted anyway. He started the game by searching for Navi, a representation of his childhood. Alright, that's good to finally settle, but what's the moral here? Are we supposed to always embrace our childhood? Are we children underneath it all, really? Is it in our power to take back the time stolen from us? I don't know about you, but none of those feel like particularly good morals to me. In fact, they kind of feel like the opposite of morals. Like, these are lessons that we shouldn't be internalizing. Did we make a mistake? Well, if you've already played the game, you probably know where I'm going with this. If you haven't played Majora's Mask though, then allow me to finish a thought from earlier. Why is the Stone Tower Temple my favorite Zelda dungeon? It's because halfway through, the entire dungeon becomes inverted. The Stone Tower Temple is built in such a way that it can be explored both right side up and upside down. It's an absolutely amazing idea for a dungeon mechanically, but it's even more impressive with how it intertwines with the narrative we've been exploring. The imagery of Link climbing the tower representing enlightenment is suddenly flipped on its head. It's transformed into a descent to hell. What Link was doing by picking and choosing which parts of his life to cast aside was incorrect. He was making a mistake, and that's why the Stone Tower had to invert. It even does so after obtaining the light arrows, which we could say is like Link finally seeing the light. The truth is, Link's childhood has long been over, despite his desperation to bring it back. It ended long before the events of Majora's Mask. It ended the moment Navi approached Link in the Kokiri Forest and the Great Deku Tree informed him of his role in the world. There was no going back after this point. While Link was never actually a true Kokiri, the illusion was completely broken here, and to pretend otherwise is just naivety. Navi meeting Link is also the first time we meet this incarnation of Link, meaning we never truly met Link in his actual innocent childhood. You know who else we never meet? The Deku Scrub that the mask was made from. He was long dead. At the very beginning of the game, we find a tree sapling thing with a face on it, which Tattle says kind of looks like us. Later, in the swamp, we can speak with the Deku King's butler, and he'll tell us that we remind him of his son. When the credits of the game roll, we can see the butler crying in front of this sapling with a face. The sapling was the butler's son. The Deku Mask was made from his soul. Link's childhood was over from the very beginning, and that's why we're shown this sapling in the opening minutes. Link doesn't find Navi in the end either. This hasn't come up yet because it hasn't been relevant, but pretty much everything in Termina is a reflection of something in Hyrule. Almost all the characters in the game also appear in Ocarina of Time, sometimes with different names, but they look the same and serve similar purposes. The real-world explanation is this is because they had to heavily reuse assets to make the game, but it does raise an interesting question. Does Link himself have a reflection in the game? It's not an easy question to answer since nobody shares Link's character model. There are theories that perhaps Kafei or Skull Kid himself are Link's reflection, but I personally believe the character that represents Link the best in Termina is Tingle, a 35-year-old childish man dressed in green that desperately wants a fairy to visit him. Sound familiar? He's not portrayed very kindly, so that's more reinforcement that Link's decision when climbing the Stone Tower Temple is not a desirable outcome. We can relate Link's desperation to return to his childhood to the overall theme of embracing the unknown and the dichotomy of certainty versus uncertainty. Link is trying to go back to a simpler time, when all he had to worry about was what games he would play with his friends in the forest, days when he could be certain of everything that would unfold. In comparison, growing up is scary. Link was forced to grow up rapidly. It's easy to understand how that could traumatize someone. Now he must deal with the dissonance of being back to his child form, but having the knowledge and experience that comes from the future, and it scares him. What is the real moral of Link's story then? To answer that question, we'll have to go to the very end of the game, when we gather all 4 giants and are able to stop the moon from falling. It's at this point when Majora reveals its true nature. Majora detaches from Skull Kid and ascends to the moon itself. We go after it, determined to put an end to the madness once and for all. The moon is quite different than one might expect. It's a peaceful grassy field with a solitary tree and a clear blue sky. Surrounding the tree are children frolicking and mostly having a good time. It's more of that motif of contrast. The ominous threat in the sky is a pretty chill place once you actually get there. The game didn't forget about it. Everything must have some shades of black and some shades of white. The children here are modeled after the Happy Mask salesman, and even ask us if we, too, will become a mask salesman. We can then give them all of our masks that we've collected and play hide and seek with them. Their minigames each revolve around a different form of Link. One for the Deku Mask, one for the Goron Mask, one for the Zora Mask, and the last one is for the human Link. After we finish their minigames, they ask for more masks, and once they're satisfied, they ask us a question. I want to highlight the question the Twin Mold Kid asks us. Twin Mold is the boss associated with this stone tower temple, and his minigame was focused around the human Link. The kid asks us, "Your true face, what kind of face is it? I wonder, the face under the mask, is that your true face?" This raises an interesting question. When we talked about Link casting away the masks he didn't like when climbing the stone tower, included in that was casting aside his human form. The human form of Link is the one underneath the masks. The Twin Mold Kid is directly asking Link here for his thoughts on who he truly is. Let me make clear that he's not telling Link that his true self is the one underneath all the masks. Is he the Deku? Is he the Goron? Is he the Zora? Is he the human? He's letting Link come to the conclusion himself. Who is he? After we finish giving away all of our masks, we can talk to the kid wearing Majora's Mask. The kid points out that we don't have any masks left. You know what's interesting though? We still have masks, the 3 transformation ones. And right there, that final contradiction is the smoking gun. The transformation masks are not metaphorical masks. They are Link. His lost childhood, his lost adulthood, and his present in-between state he didn't want to believe in. They are all parts of him. The answer is that Link's true face isn't any one of them, not even the human. That's why the Twin Mold Kid asks the question in the first place. It's not as simple as Link's real face is the one underneath the mask. His real face, his real self, is the combination of all of them, of all of his lived experiences. We have now truly reached enlightenment, and are given the Fierce Deity's mask as a reward. This transforms Link into an ultra-powerful form that trivializes the final boss. It's the reward for collecting every mask in the game. This is the real symbol of finding the answer, unlike the false one at the stone tower. The final boss fight versus Majora has 3 phases. The first is Majora's Mask, then Majora's Incarnation, and finally Majora's Wrath. The way the forms evolve kind of resemble the way a child grows up. It first begins in a small, weaker form, the mask itself. It then becomes this awkward abomination that dances around everywhere while the music is all over the place. It's a teenager now, an in-between state. It then finally settles down, becomes cool and composed, while also heavily expanding its muscles. It matures into an adult. Overcoming all these stages of life is the exact journey Link went through in the game, and it's a fitting final boss fight. So what have we learned today? Hands that come out of toilets are surprisingly insightful, everything in Majora's Mask contradicts itself, and Link is simultaneously a Deku Scrub, Goron, Zora, and human. Got that? Okay, more seriously, to bring it home, Majora's Mask is an incredibly deep game. From a gameplay perspective, it's uniquely structured in a way where the entire game feels like a Zelda dungeon with how interconnected the world is. It's also incredibly weird, which is emblematic of how special the game is and how the developers basically just added whatever they thought would be cool. It makes a conscious effort to not portray anything as wholly good or bad, even down to the core gameplay mechanics, which tie into the overall theme of the uncertainty of life and how we must embrace it. On top of all of that, Link goes through quite the personal journey and finally comes to terms with the fact that he is all of the masks he wears, and he shouldn't fixate on any individual one of them like he did with the Deku representing his childhood. We have now finally reached the end. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do be sure to leave a like and subscribe so I can make more videos like these. Majora's Mask is full of aspects open to interpretation, so also let me know in the comments your own thoughts on the game. Before we truly end, there are a couple of things I wanted to mention that didn't quite fit anywhere in the script. First of all, when I was replaying the game to capture footage, I realized I never fully processed the story of the guy who gives you the Bremen mask before. I thought about it a little harder, and it might genuinely be one of my favorite jokes in video games ever. The imagery of this guy joining an animal troupe on the technicality that humans are animals and then getting outranked by a dog just hits for me. Second, you may have noticed we didn't talk much about the Happy Mask salesman himself. Truthfully, I have no idea on how he and the Song of Healing fit into the greater puzzle that I laid out in this video. My best guess is it's some kind of play on how the average person sells masks, like metaphorically speaking, we put on a mask to project to others and we're selling that idea of ourselves to them. It didn't feel super organic or fleshed out though, so I cut it from the script. Maybe you can finish the job for me. Alright, that's it for real. Thank you once again for watching, and see you next time.